Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I am Jackson, and I'm joined here, as always, by the man who knows you should never trade for a Steelers wide receiver. Kyle, how's it going?
Doing pretty good. The track record is not great. Unlike this great sports month we have. A lot of action going on, and it's been great stuff.
Yeah, it has been. Every night in the NBA and NHL, it almost feels weird talking about football at this point with all the other stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much happening. Every night's been entertaining. Every afternoon's been entertaining. I've had something to watch. It feels like every day for like the last 3 weeks, and it's been amazing.
Yeah, with hockey, it's like, a team's down 3, and then all of a sudden it's a 1-goal game, and all this stuff happening. Baseball's happening too. I'm pretty sure. I haven't checked.
Yeah, baseball is happening. Not too great for our teams, specifically mine. But we're grinding. Still early in the season. Nothing to complain about yet. And it's been electric, no doubt.
Yeah. Well, Kyle, I should let everyone know at the beginning of the show that there will be no show next week. I will be on my honeymoon, so not going to be doing a show from that. But we will be back in 2 weeks to do a show at our normal time. I was thinking for next week, for 2 weeks, did you want to do the quarterback rankings?
Absolutely. Let's rank them. All of the starting quarterbacks. Always a controversial show, so let's get into it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's what we'll do in 2 weeks. So everyone be on the lookout for that. Also, apologies for coming at you from a little bit of a different time. Sometimes we just have to do that. But yeah, Kyle, we have a lot to talk about football-wise. Shall we get into the NFC draft recap?
Yeah, let's get into it. There's a lot of interesting teams I thought this draft season, and some good ones, and then some questionable ones in the NFC. So where are you going?
Yeah, well, actually, first, I see Zachary Stewart left a super chat before the show started. Steelers should have traded some fans to the Pirates. Kyle, do you think they should have? What could the Pirates have traded back?
Anything but Paul Skeens.
What was that?
Anything but Paul Skeens. He's like the only thing left of value, and I guess the stadium too. Nice stadium.
Yeah, maybe just like some, like, I don't know, let them like take like a trip there just to the state, like a weekend at the stadium.
Yeah, remember that one thing where they had like the Skeens rookie card and they were offering like a lifetime supply of season tickets, and then like you could sit at a game with like Livy Dunn or something like that. It was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard.
No, I didn't hear about this.
Yeah, they had this whole like giveaway if you found the Skeens rookie card, and I think the person turned it down.
Okay, well, tough times for the Pirates. But, Kyle, we're not here to talk about that. Let's just start with the Cowboys, why don't we, for our recap, just because, obviously, the news of the morning, they traded for George Pickens, so we can kind of talk about that as we talk about this. But, ultimately, the Tyler Booker draft pick was weird. Picking him at 12, he was projected to be a kind of an end of the first round type of guy. I do have to say, I thought they got good value on some of their other picks, like Donovan Ezeraku, getting him at 44, I thought was good value. Siobhan Revel, getting him at 76 was great value, I thought. And they had a ton of picks. So I didn't love their first round selection. I do wonder if like maybe they thought Ted McMillan was going to fall to them, given the fact that we see them now go out and trade for a receiver. But I don't hate this draft class, although I didn't love the first pick.
I didn't love the first pick either, but it's also one of those things where I think we've talked about this before, where I felt like if you said that they took Ezeraku in the first round, it would have been a bit of a reach for me, but it's not like an extreme reach. And then Booker in the second round, I probably would have liked that a bit more and been okay with it. So I think they got good value with their second round pick. And then I think it kind of evens out to where, I kind of like this draft. I think Jaden Blue's explosive. I think, they got a bigger back two in Phil Maffa. They got some depth at different positions. And then two guys that I think could start for this team right away in the first 2 rounds. This team has put a lot of resources in its offensive line at this point. And I think it's been some mixed results so far. They're going to need some better performance out of Tyler Guyton this season. But this team has done very well historically in those positions. Tyler Smith is a good player. They're hoping Booker's going to be in that position. And they obviously had a need there and decided to address it right away.
Yeah. They now have 3 players on their offensive line named Tyler, also a guy named Terrence.
Yeah, it's a bit too much for me. I don't like that.
Yeah, it's very similar to Texan draft class. What goes on there? Good thing that's just like, I mean, at that point you just have to. Everyone's going by their last name, right? There can't be, because sometimes there's like one person can be Tyler and the other person can be like Guyton, But if there's four, like you all have to go by last names at that point.
Yeah, maybe Tyler Smith keeps Tyler just because not really an identifiable last name either. So maybe just do Tyler for him, and then everybody else has to go by last name.
Yeah, I think so. What do you think of the George Pickens trade? It's weird. Where I think if it was any other team, and it wasn't George Pickens, we'd all be sitting here saying, why is he only getting a 3rd round pick? He only has 1 year left of control before he's becoming a free agent, but still, he's a 24-year-old, really good. I think like good number 2. I would say great number 2 receiver who can play number 1 if needed. Could be a great player opposite CeeDee Lamb, but obviously the track record of it seems like the Steelers know when to get rid of receivers. So what did you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like good value from the Cowboys' perspective. I don't hate it at all. He's a good outside receiver. Obviously he's got some interesting decision-making points that are, I think, played a big part in it, not to mention that he's going to need a payday too. But yeah, I mean, this is just one of those things with the NFL that I'll never understand is it seems like teams want to do the cost-effective move maybe a year earlier rather than wait till to get anything. And it's just like, I don't know. I feel like Pickens should be worth more than a 3rd round pick, but it's like, yeah, we're just jumping the gun on his contract and, getting rid of him for what we can scrap for a 1-year deal, basically. So it's just one of those things that I think is just a disconnect between me and the NFL for the value of those things. But it seems like good value for the Cowboys. Like you said, the track record for Steelers receivers going elsewhere is not good. That being said, maybe, I wouldn't even say Antonio Brown was like a physically dominant receiver either. This may be like the most physically impressive receiver that they've let go, right? Between him, Mike Wallace. Wallace obviously had the speed, but not quite as like strong and had all of these intangibles that Pickens has. So he's got the skill set that it feels like he could go anywhere and be good, but we'll see. I mean, Pittsburgh has a track record of being right on this for sure.
Yeah, because you think about like the Chase Claypool, which I didn't bring up in the video, but he was someone who got traded for the 32nd overall pick. It was the first pick of the 2nd round in a year where there's only 31 first-round picks. So that didn't work out well for Chicago. Also, Deontay Johnson last year. So, yeah, I mean, it's weird. But I would also say I agree Pickens been more physical than those players. I just think he's been better than all those players since Antonio Brown, who obviously the reason why he struggled was not because of football reasons.
Yeah, it wasn't a talent issue for Antonio Brown, that's for sure. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see how it works out. This shifts my calculus a little bit of Dallas for next year, though. I mean, the secondary playmaking of this team was a huge problem last season. They're bringing 2 running backs into the fold. They're trying to bolster that backfield. They still have Jake Ferguson, who's a reliable tight end, and then they got CeeDee Lamb, a nice partner here, and yeah, I would be pretty excited about this as a Cowboys fan.
Yeah, a lot of hope for Joe Milton.
And Joe Milton, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Sorry again for that, Kyle. That's tough. That's tough.
Just bizarre move. Whatever. It's fine.
Okay. Let's go through the Eagles, who are known for showing up come draft season. Jahad Campbell was kind of of course, they get the really good Alabama player who falls to 31. They actually trade up 1 pick to get him, interestingly enough. They also got Andrew Makuba, a safety who I really liked. He was technically a reach from the big board, but I don't consider it that way. So those 2 picks are really good. Some other interesting ones along the list, even like Cameron Williams was projected to go top 100. They got him at 207, so that's kind of interesting. But, again, you look at the consensus big board, they tend to be on the right side of it on most of their picks with a couple of exceptions. So got a guy named Mac McWilliams, and I can't figure out if that's his real name or like a nickname, because it's not possible that his last name is McWilliams and he goes by Mac, and that's not related, right? Is it McCorkle McWilliams?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
I didn't do the research on this one. That's
I did a lot of research. I couldn't find it. Someone in the comments, let me know.
I mean, I like it, Mac Mick.
I guess
Mac,
so.
Mac.
Yeah. But my question is it a nickname because he's McWilliams? Did they just call him Mac? Like sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
It's like a Sauce Gardner situation. His name isn't actually Sauce.
We'll have to get IT on that one. That's a good question, but I do
Yeah.
like it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, this was a really good draft, though. This team continues to draft well. They continue to win the, the offseason, the draft grades season is where
Mhm.
they excel. Although it does translate to the field more times than not. This team's been very successful, including the most recent Super Bowl. Smile Munden's a interesting player because he's just insanely athletic, and I think he could be very good at that linebacker position as well. Jihad Campbell's, like you said, there's a lot of people who fell in love with him in the draft, and then it just seemed to be a disconnect between like the big board and where people just adored his game. And I think he's a very fun player to watch and could fit into this team very easily. And then Makuba, yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Makuba is that like he plays a position that doesn't really exist as much anymore. Like he is a true deep free safety, and we just haven't seen a lot of those guys lately anymore. You probably have Devin McCourty, like the Earl Thomas's age and all that kind of stuff. You want your safeties to be a little more versatile, and that's kind of what I think hurt him. But he is very good in coverage, so that could make it up for it. And yeah, I'm excited for this draft. I think this team did really well.
The Eagles are approaching the territory of like, there's that tweet of like about the Tampa Bay Rays of like, I love this trade for the Rays. Who did they give up and who did they get? I feel like the Eagles are at that point with the draft. Like, I love this draft for the Eagles. Who did they draft again? Like, it just like everyone just immediately just says that it's a good draft because they usually is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's becoming very like memeable at this point, but like if the track record's there, you kind of have to back it up. They continue to do a very good job.
Yeah, and again, also like just foresight. If the Chiefs got Jihad Campbell with pick 31, it would have been like, what a great pick. So there's that too.
Yeah, absolutely. So.
Well, let's move on to let's go to the Giants, because this was another very fascinating draft. Kyle, hey, you're not going to get any complaints about drafting Jackson Dart at 25 from me. I had him going around that spot. I had him as my quarterback 2 in this draft class, so I liked that. I liked getting Abdul Carter at pick 3 and not overthinking where's he going to fit and all that stuff, just getting the best player. Darius Alexander at 65 seems like a good value pick there. Cam Scatabo pick 105, that's great value. Kyle, this was a really good draft, I thought, from my perspective. Again, your opinion on Jackson Dart is going to massively impact how you feel about this draft, but as a Jackson Dart fan, I like this draft.
Yeah. He was my 3rd quarterback. I had a 2nd round grade on him, but I understood the idea of trading up for a quarterback to get the 5th year option. I figured it was going to happen for potentially both quarterbacks, and it ended up just having one, and then one waited a lot longer than we anticipated. So yeah, it's going to be a fascinating one for that. But yeah, Jackson Dart, they took a chance on him. They didn't give up a whole lot in the trade either, so it didn't feel like a crazy trade up for me. Like, it's not like they like sold the future for this thing. It felt like a very fair value to move up to that range to get Dart. So they get their quarterback. They're going to take a chance on it. And I don't hate it at all. He's got a lot of people in front of him to help him develop too. I think that this could be a good situation for him. We'll see how it develops and how it plays out. Obviously, the coach is under some fire, so that makes it a little bit harder because you don't want to continually be changing coaches for a young quarterback. But there's a lot of value in this draft just in general. PFF loved this draft. I know they did, and I know a few other people did. Guys like Mbao, Scatabo, Alexander, they got good value for all of those picks as well, along with getting debatably the best player in this entire draft in Abdul Carter and a quarterback in the 1st round that people can get excited about. So I think it's a really good one.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where it's like they trade for pick 25, and I think our brains like, oh, they got a 1st round pick. They should have to give up like a future 1st round pick to make that happen. But it's like they traded up 10 spots, like from 35 to 25. Like, it shouldn't be like that much. So it just kind of the way our brains work with 1st round and 2nd round grades and stuff like that. But yeah, again, we'll see how it works out. But ultimately, it's always a good idea to. I've said this before, but it's they went from a team that definitely doesn't have the quarterback situation figured out to a team that maybe has the quarterback situation figured out long term because of this pick. So anytime you can do that, it's usually worth pick 25.
Yeah, wasn't the very next pick Atlanta trading a future 1st round pick for 26 too?
I believe so. Yeah, but Atlanta didn't trade much else in the Giants gave up pick 35. Atlanta didn't give up. We'll talk about that when we get there. But Atlanta didn't give up any like major capital in this draft, which is why they had to give up a future first. It's still a weird thing. It's still a odd thing to happen. But we'll get there.
Yeah. It was just interesting. Yeah, I just thought, seeing those two side by side, obviously they got the higher pick from the second round from the Giants, but it was a very fascinating. I still thought it was pretty good value, especially if you're drafting a quarterback. So I definitely don't hate them taking that chance.
Yeah, it's it's a fun one. I feel like the Giants are fun again.
Yeah, we'll see. We got to see them play football first.
Sure, but at least they're much more interesting than they've been.
Definitely.
To me.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have a fun defensive line to watch next season. We're going to have maybe an offense improve with Russell Wilson. You get another year of Tyrone Tracy. I mean, there's Scatabo. You got some you got a nice ground game there. You got Neighbors still. I mean, maybe there's something here brewing. We'll see.
Yeah. Kyle, let's talk some balls. Let's talk about the Commanders here, who had, I'm going to say, a bit of a bizarre draft. So they get Josh Connerly Jr., who I think the logic is like, hey, we just don't want an Andrew Luck situation happening. We have Jaden Daniels. We're going to do whatever we can to help out the offensive line situation. I do have to say, like, I feel like, okay, listen, Andrew Wiley isn't like a god. You can upgrade there if you want to. But also, like, if Connerly isn't a great starter, are you upgrading there? And, you already have Brandon Coleman as depth there. So I was just kind of confused by that need pick. Maybe he was just the highest player on the board. I don't know. Really like the Trey Amos pick with the second round. I thought I had a first round grade on him. I thought he was great, and they get him at 61. That's good value. But also, if only 3 other picks, feels like they got 3 guys who a big part of why they drafted them are special teams. Granted, 2 of those are into 200s, so what are you going to do? But I don't know how much better the Commanders got, with the exception of Trey Amos, which to me is a slam dunk pick.
Yeah, they nailed that pick. I mean, it's. I feel like you're always going to grade a draft pretty low when it's 5 picks and 3 of the 5 picks are after pick 120, right? Like, you're just not going to find a lot of starting caliber talent in that situation. But the Amos pick is a home run. And look, I mean, I liked him as a prospect. He was fringe first round for me, maybe early second. So it's not like a crazy reach to me at 29 at all. And he's pretty versatile. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up, playing some guard potentially this season or playing tackle, depending on where they see him fit. I mean, he's got to prove it, obviously, on the field that he can play well. Still a rookie and all that, but, he played a lot in college and he played really well in college, and I think he could play multiple positions. So I think that's probably the argument for Washington in that pick. And then they're hoping for that to work out, and maybe they got a starting corner in the 60s. But yeah, everything else beyond that is we'll wait and see.
Yeah, I think it's just like, I look at this defense and I look at certain secondary positions. I look at the edge rush room right now. They could probably still you could always use more bodies on the interior. I just feel like there's so many holes defensively for a team that's really trying to go for it these next 3 years with Daniels on a rookie deal. My question for Commanders is not have they gotten better, because they have this offseason, but I just feel like they had so much, they had this draft picks, they had so much capital, and did they maximize that? In my opinion, I would put a lot more emphasis on the defense. They decided not to go that route, and I guess hey, sometimes you want to build on your strengths, but I just feel like last year, the reason why they lost was they just could not play defense against Philadelphia, and they kept fumbling. Like this year, but if the plan just to keep the offense going, maybe it was what got them to the conference championship game, but I would have liked to see them put more resources in defense.
Definitely feel that way. It really feels like they're banking on some return to form from Marshawn Lattimore, and I mean Jonathan Jones too, maybe a little bit too. So that's kind of what they're banking on, because this isn't a strong pass rush group. They do have good linebackers, but that's not really like where you want your strength of your defense more times than not. So, I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out, because, yeah, they definitely need some help. And, we'll see what happens as we go from here to the beginning of the season. But it feels like they can use another piece.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. And there still is some free agency left, as we just saw with Pickens getting traded. So we'll see what they do. But let's move on. Let's go to my team, Kyle, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a draft that I like this draft. I think there's a lot of really interesting pieces here. So the Emeka Egbuka pick, again, it's not what I would have done. I'm not going to crush a team for valuing wide receivers highly, especially a team like Tampa Bay that is so built around like passing attack. That's kind of what this team is, again, what they're great at. And we saw with the injuries last year, are you getting 17 games out of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin? They're not getting any younger as well. I'm fine with it. And then there's some picks I really like. The Benjamin Morrison pick, middle of the second round. I think he's going to be great in the Todd Bowles scheme. Jacob Parrish as well should helping out the corner depth, something I've been begging them to do for years. They finally do. David Walker, a really fascinating pick at pick 121. So another edge rusher, another wide receiver. Kyle, this is a draft that I'm a fan of.
Yeah, I like this draft a lot. Morrison is kind of one of my favorite players in this draft that I figured wouldn't be in round one, but, a round two guy for sure. Great man-to-man corner. He had some injuries last season, but if you watched him 2 years ago play Marvin Harrison Jr. and kind of just man him up the whole game, and you would have been like, this is a top 10 pick. Like he handled the best receiver in college football that season incredibly well in that game and held his own. I came away just from that game alone. I was incredibly impressed. And then they get a few other guys around here. So I like that pick a lot. And look, Egbuka is these Ohio State guys. They know how to run routes. They know, they create a lot of separation, whether it's the system or them. I mean, so far, it looks like Ohio State just generates really good NFL receivers. And I think Egbuka is a guy who was sort of the boring pick of the draft just because it feels like he's been in college forever. But he's just been really good and really productive forever as like Ohio State's number 3 receiver. And he's going to go into a situation where, guess what? He knows how to be a number 3 receiver, and he's going to have a pretty good duo in front of him to learn from too. So I would be excited to see him play well in this system.
Yeah, it's weird with receivers where, like, for defensive linemen, like, you see a team like the Eagles consistently draft more and more defensive linemen, constantly trying to have a steady flow of, guys that can play. Because there's injuries, things go wrong. You want to make sure you have enough of them. We all kind of get that. For whatever reason with receivers, anytime a team has 2 good receivers, we act like they don't need any more. Like sometimes having 3 good receivers or 4 good receivers with Jalen McMillan there is a good thing. These guys are all going to get snaps, right? Mike Evans isn't going to play every snap in a game. And this way, when he has to take a break, you can still have McMillan and Egbuka and Godwin out there, which is, that's going to be really tough for secondaries.
Yeah. I agree with all that. I mean, like, look, McMillan had a couple nice moments in the playoffs late in the season, that kind of thing. It's not like he wasn't the kind of player to me last season where it's like, oh, never draft a receiver again because he's that good.
Right.
I think it's completely fine to say we need to bring in some more depth there. And I think it also is just the way the draft broke for them. They obviously viewed that they were fine at other positions and, there wasn't really a need for, could they have brought in another corner this season or something? They did. They got a really good one later in the draft, and they got a slot corner that they really like in Jacob Parrish. So they were able to still address their needs, I thought, and got the player that maybe was the number 1 guy in there at that spot for them.
Yeah. And I think right when it happened, a lot of people were saying, what about defense? Your defense was so bad. A lot of rounds in the draft, they were able to address that later. So, yeah, I'm a fan of it. Let's move on to a team that you could say I'm not a fan of, the New Orleans Saints. That's my segue to the Saints. But this is an interesting draft. So, first off, love the Kelvin Banks pick. He was one of my guys. He was my tackle 1 in this draft class. So, big fan of him. He goes at 9. Totally a great pick, in my opinion. Then we have some questionable ones. Tyler Shook, getting him at 40 in the draft, early second round pick on him. Some people really liked him. We'll see if it works out. Vernon Broughton, projected to go 153. They get him at 71. So some other, interesting ones. The later picks seem to be okay, but ultimately I think some head scratching is going on here looking at this list, Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some interesting players here. It's hard to criticize because these are both like I liked Banks and I like Shook. I mean, Banks was still my number 3 tackle in the draft, but at the same time, I also had him like top 15. So it wasn't a crazy reach for me. He's played a lot of football. He had more pass blocking snaps than any other player in college football last season. And he did really well in all of them. Like he's just, like I said, during our pre-draft thing, I think he's he was the one tackle I think you could watch last year and say this guy's dominating games. And he's really good. I think that is a perfectly justifiable pick. Tyler Shuck was my 4th quarterback in this draft. I had him as a 3rd-round one, but like, look, I get the age thing, but it wasn't like an age thing where this guy came out of nowhere his last season after playing in the system for 7 years and dominated. This guy's bounced around college football, had some pretty freakish and unlucky injuries, but he was a highly regarded prospect in high school. He has all of the arm talent in the world. He has good athleticism. He has size. He has kind of all the intangibles you want that I don't think it's not like a Brandon Weeden pick in that regard. I think it's a guy who is pretty polished and pretty skilled that just kind of had everything break the way he wanted to finally because he got healthy for once and had a very good season. So I think it's a justifiable pick and Shuck too. But yeah, very interesting draft overall. They drafted a lot of experience, it feels like. Even a guy like Danny Stutzman, pretty enjoyable player to watch in college football. I don't know how it's going to translate to the next level, but like the guy just has a nose for the ball and played a lot at Oklahoma. A guy like Devin Neal, too, very good running back, very athletic. Had some really good moments as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out because, I don't mind drafting guys with experience, but how much of these guys are great prospects is the question.
Yeah, should be interesting. The Saints currently now have 3 quarterbacks on their roster who are all on rookie deals. Jake Haener, Tyler Shuck, and Spencer Rattler, and then also Derek Carr. We'll see what goes on with that. But hey, I mean, ultimately, if one of these picks hits, then hey, if Tyler Shuck hits, pick 40, that feels like nothing.
Well, look, I mean, at the end of the day, we continue to say that if you don't have the guy, you should keep drafting the guy until you get the guy, right? Like we continue to say teams should just keep drafting a quarterback every year until they have the guy.
Mm-hmm.
It would be kind of hypocritical of us to then criticize a team that's actually deploying that strategy for a change. Like they are at least trying. Like I don't know if I like Tyler Shuck as a prospect. I don't know if he's going to be good. I would probably bet on him not being good because that's just kind of how it works more times than not.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it's going to work out, but like they're trying. They're stepping up to the dartboard and throwing the darts, and we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the criticism of the Saints is why don't they just do a full teardown rebuild and really try to get someone? But you're absolutely correct. It's better doing this than not doing than the Chuck is. It's still a pick I would ultimately defend, even if he's not a prospect I like because it's worth the shot.
Yeah. If he was highest on their board, like take him and see what happens. But yeah. It's just it definitely was a controversial pick, obviously, because Mel Kiper was on the broadcast.
Right, exactly. Let's go to the Carolina Panthers. Kyle, I like this draft by the Panthers. So you get Ted McMillan. Yeah, I know. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of both the Panthers and the Giants draft.
Yeah, something's broken. we gotta get that figured out. Let's get someone on that.
It's almost like I'm not actually just blindly hating teams and just giving my opinion on stuff.
Oh, we know you blindly hate teams. It's fine.
Only the Saints. The Panthers. I mean, well, first off, I touched on this prior to this, which there was a lot of talk of, are the Panthers going to get Jalen Walker at pick 8? And I kept saying, like, no, get Ted McMillan at 8. Get the receiver that can help help out Bryce Young. They don't overthink it. They get the star receiver who can help out their young quarterback. Also, like Nick Scorrington, he wasn't my favorite prospect, but at 51, that's good value. Princely getting him at 77, that's good value. So, like, the top 3 picks really just great, in my opinion, by the Panthers.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of good value there. I mean, I can't hate any of those picks at all. At the picks they got him. Ted McMillan, we'll see. He's an interesting prospect. Like, I think he's one of the, if you like college football and you saw his highlights and the way he performed every week with not the best quarterback situation, you think this guy's a superstar. But like, I also will say, like, we said the same thing about a guy like Michael Crabtree, and it didn't quite work out. Like, if he ends up Crabtree, I still think that's a pretty good pick. Like, Crabtree ended up a pretty good receiver for a number of years.
I heard he was mediocre.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't talk to Richard Sherman about that. But Look, I mean, like, if he ends up that level of a player, I think that's still a decent pick. Like, I just, I pushed back when people were saying this is a superstar prospect. So we'll see what it looks like for McMillan. But yeah, good value all around. Trevor Etienne's a guy who's incredibly explosive too. I mean, yeah, I can't hate this draft at all. I thought they did a good job.
Yeah, I feel like, do you think it hurts Trevor Etienne that that the other Etienne didn't like light the world on fire when he got drafted?
Probably a little bit, but
like would
yeah,
Amon-Ra St. Brown have been drafted higher if Equimemius was better?
He'd be a first round pick at that point.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. That is tough, but yeah,
I guess it didn't work for sure.
Yeah, that is definitely true. What do you think of Cameron Jackson too? 342 pounds of him.
Yeah, I mean, those guys are valuable, right? You're going to get snaps.
Yeah, he's definitely going to take up some space on the field. Him and maybe he can help out Derek Brown a little bit there in the middle. So yeah, I think it's exciting to be Panthers. I think they made the right pick with the receiver.
Yeah, no, it's weird how I feel like these teams almost like how divisions kind of work sometimes, where it's like, okay, you have like who are the two guys that Ted McMillan is getting kind of compared to? It's like Mike Evans and Drake London, and now McMillan also goes to that division.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just it always ends up working out that way.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the Atlanta Falcons, who, Kyle, you brought up, traded a future first-round pick. And again, let's actually start there with the trading the future first-round pick. People are really kind of dunking on Atlanta. Essentially what happened was so the Rams were able to, they moved up from the third round to the second round. So they moved up some spots. And then also they traded pick 26 for the Falcons' future first-round pick. I think you see future first round pick and you're like, what in the world just happened? But essentially, it's almost like they're swapping pick 26 for a future first, and and the Rams get a little bit more value because you're having to wait an extra year to get the pick. Of course, the risk here is for the Falcons. Okay, you guys were picking at 15 this past year. Previously, you picked at pick number 8 for 3 consecutive seasons. Are you going to be picking at pick 26, or if you take a step back and you're picking top 10, this is a horrible trade?
Yeah, I mean, technically, even if you pick 20,
yeah,
you traded the 20th pick next year for the 26th pick this year. So
well, and even if they pick at 26, they still lose value because they had to trade a little bit of extra value. So it's long term, it's not a great move, but that's kind of how these things work. But yeah, sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're good. So yeah, it's definitely a interesting strategy, but I'm just gonna assume that they got a player they really liked, and you know what? It's not the best value, I think, overall for the trade at all. That's definitely fair, but for a team that desperately needed some pass rush help, they got a player I really liked, and I actually would have liked him at 15, and then Jalen Walker at 26 a lot more. But still, I think getting both of those guys, they both have pass rush potential. And this team desperately needed some help in the pass rush department. They traded for Matthew Judon this past season. That did not work out. They definitely need some help there. And they got 2 guys that I like at the spot, or one guy that I like, and I think one guy who has a ton of potential if it works out. It's just if it works out.
Yeah, Jalen Walker, completely developmental guy who played kind of half off-ball linebacker, half edge in college. James Pierce, not a developmental guy who should be able to step in right away and play well. Although there was some questions about, some character concerns, like is he coachable and things of that nature, which is part of why he fell. Ultimately, if I'm the Falcons, I think I just sit at 15, take James Pierce Jr. and go that way. I don't draft Jalen Walker. I wasn't a huge Jalen Walker fan, but the talent is undeniable. Like, if you can figure out a way to make him work, I think in my notes I put like he's really talented. I just don't know what he is, and if they can figure out what he is, he could be really good. I also really like Xavier Watts with their third round pick. I thought he should have gone way earlier. Who's projected to be a mid-second rounder. They get him at 96. But ultimately only 5 picks as well, because they traded for Judon and they lost the pick with the Kirk Cousins tampering thing. So that's not ideal, but we'll see. I mean, ultimately, it's reminds me a bit of the Will Anderson Jr. trade, where it's like they're betting on themselves, and if this backfires, then okay, well then you're all out of job anyway, so might as well take a swing.
Yeah. Some controversial drafts the last two drafts for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be an interesting one. Just as far as the prospects they went heavy on the defense. They got 2 edge rushers and 2 safeties. I really like Watts as well. Him and Jesse Bates could be one of the best coverage safety duos in the league. And then Billy Bowman's a pretty versatile player. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of deploys in that unique, like, big nickel safety kind of role where he's just kind of all over the place and we're matchup dependent. So I wouldn't be surprised if all 3 of those safeties are on the field in third down situations as well. So I really like what they got out of those players. And, they didn't have a ton of picks, but I thought they maximized the prospects they got, even if they overpaid for that value.
Yeah, I agree. I think this was I love getting those players, and the saving grace, if we want to say they gave too much value, is I think Pierce Jr. is a prospect that might be better than your typical 26th overall pick in a draft that most of these guys later were worse than your typical late first round pick. So that's kind of the saving grace. Joe asked, "How's Luna?"
Luna is doing good. She's just sitting over there right now.
Good. Well, yeah, Kyle, let's go to the team that hosted this draft, the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay Packers, who they select Matthew Golden in the first round, a pick that I really liked. I think Matthew Golden was a very good player. If I was Tampa Bay and wanted to go receiver, he probably would have been my pick. Interesting. I think the criticism of the Matthew Golden pick is they already have plenty of good receivers. And if Golden only ends up being good, then have you actually gotten better here? Whereas for other teams, if you get a good receiver, there's like the Panthers. If Pat McMillan only ends up being good, then they still got a good player. But that's kind of the criticism here. But ultimately, I still think it's worth it for his potential. Not really sure I fully am on board with the Anthony Belton at pick 54 selection. But Kyle, what did you think of this draft?
Yeah, a little bit up and down. I agree with what you said about Belton, but I am all for Matt LaFleur having this Matthew Golden, Jaden Reed combo at receiver. Like, I just want to see the interesting things that he could do with these two on the field. Could this be like a Miami sort of situation with these 2 speed demons? So I'm all for it. Like, I like the pick. I like the fit there. And I like the scheme that he's going into. So I think that they got a lot of speed now on offense. This is going to be, one of the more electric offenses, I think, next season. If Jordan Love can, round into some consistency, big if for him. But I think that
during Toyotathon, it'll be great, right? During Toyotathon, this will be great.
During Toyotathon, indeed. So yeah, kind of up and down draft overall. I didn't love some of their later picks, but I think if Golden hits, he could absolutely be a star with that speed. But it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah. I don't have too much more to say about the Packers. Do you have more?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. Here, I'm going to run to the bathroom. You want to talk about the Vikings for a minute?
The Vikings. All right, let me pull up my notes on the Vikings.
Okay, I can give you my first thoughts on it, just real quick. But the Donovan Jackson one, slight reach for me at 24, projected to go 39. But here, Kyle, I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, so I think they kind of wanted Gray Zabel, honestly, and then Gray Zabel ended up going higher than when they thought. I think there was a thing about him coming in for a couple workouts or interviews or whatever it was. So he ends up going higher. So they pivot to, I guess they just decided to go straight for need and Donovan Jackson. And yeah, I thought that was a bit of a reach, but I like some of their later picks too. I really like Tay Felton. I think he's a guy who could be pretty nice at that with that 3rd round pick. And I really like a few of their other guys across the board too. So Kobe Keene's a guy who, played really well last season too at the linebacker spot. But yeah, the Donovan Jackson one, I just didn't really think this was an awesome interior line draft. And I didn't even have Booker in the 1st round grade. And I definitely didn't have Jackson as a 1st round grade as far as guards go. But I guess the Vikings have built enough of a depth chart here to where I feel like they felt like they could draft for need rather than best player available. And they definitely needed some help on the interior offensive line. So maybe they felt like that was an opportunity to go ahead and pivot to that. But still, definitely feels like a bit of a reach for me at that spot. And not my favorite pick. But yeah, I think Felton could really work in this offense. I think they needed another receiver to pair next to Addison and Justin Jefferson anyways. and they're just going to throw more speed on the field because he has speed. And yeah, I think he's going to be a very good weapon in this offense next to those two. And all three of those guys feel like they can move around, play in the slot, play on the outside, and do some different things as well. And Jackson's still not back. What else do I want to talk about with the Vikings? Let's see here. I mean, it's clear that they came into this figuring that they needed to help out their offensive line the most. And, they were able to do that with that pick. And here's Jackson.
Okay, I'm back, Kyle. Sorry I left you. I could have picked a more interesting team for you. I apologize.
It's all good. Yeah. I was struggling to talk about how much Minnesota needed help on their offensive line.
Yeah, that's my bad. I could have given you another one. I have nothing else to add to that. And I didn't even hear it, but I think you nailed it. I'm sure you said any of my thoughts that I had in the time that you had to do the Vikings.
Yeah. We'll go with that. Yeah, we can move on. You don't even need to hear back.
Yeah, I said Donovan Jackson, bit of a reach, but I get it. They wanted an offensive guard. Kyle, the Lions. Speaking of reaches, the Detroit Lions, who it's similar to like the Steelers trading away a receiver, where it's like at this point you just can't like say anything because they're good at they know what they're doing. But still, Tyreek Williams, I think will be a valuable player for the Lions. I don't know if I would draft him at 29. But he will be, again, those types of guys are important guys. We already talked about it. Getting a good interior guy will help. The Isaac Tisala selection was also a bit strange. He was projected to go at 70. They get him at 168. They needed a guard. They got Tate Rattledge at 57, so that's good. But again, another one of these Lions drafts that doesn't make a lot of sense when it happens, so it'll probably end up being really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting one. They have DJ Reader at that spot already, but, they clearly still valued that position. They went and got the player, and yeah, it feels like an overdraft just based on value of the position. But if he's a good run stuffing defender, he's going to play for a long time and be pretty good at that spot. So you can't hate it that much. But yeah, it definitely felt like a couple reaches here, but not the most exciting draft, not a ton of playmakers, but I mean, this team's already been covered it. There's plenty of playmakers on this team that, they decided to run it back there. I think the one thing you probably could have asked is, could they have got some more pass rushing depth after what happened last season? But, they're clearly banking on some of their guys in the building.
Yeah, and part of it too was like maybe they just didn't love anyone. Maybe like they weren't as high as Araku because the league wasn't like maybe they just didn't love someone at that spot. Especially with James Pierce. I wonder if they would have gone with James Pierce had he fallen 2 more slots to them, mm-hmm. Right? So at a certain point, maybe you just say, well, hey, we would have loved an edge rusher, but like we feel like we're getting a worse player if we do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible, for sure. So it you never know how it works, but I think that's the one thing where I could have said, like, I still think they have a need at that spot, but there's also the chance that there's a higher chance that a rookie edge rusher is not going to help them right away either.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Because this is every Brad Holmes draft is considered a reach until it's not a reach, and that's kind of true, right? I think the question you just have to ask is like, okay, is this because you've had a hot streak, or is this because you're actually right?
Yeah, I mean it's just the nature of the thing, right? Like is running back worth it in the first round? The data typically says no. The data typically says that a run stuffing defensive tackle is not worth a first round pick. But at the same time, if he's good, he's going to be good for 10 years on this team. And so you can't hate it that much. But at the same, it's just, it's clear that his perception of value versus the standard perception of value for positions is different. And maybe he's just saying, I want a good player. I'm not really caring about where they play.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see. I do think like, again, there's going to be a point when Tyreek Williams makes a good play and everyone's going to say, oh, remember when you all laughed at that pick? Like, that's going to happen. He's going to be an effective player for him.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the final team in this division, the Chicago Bears. I really could have given you Lions or Bears, and I gave you Vikings to talk about for 2 minutes by yourself. I apologize, Kyle. This was a really fascinating draft. The Colston Loveland pick is obviously kind of the highlight here with him being, projected to be the second tight end taken. He projected to go 15th. He goes 10th. That's not that crazy. Projected to be tight end 2. He gets selected, tight end 1. It's not the craziest thing in the world, but it is kind of we talk about the Lions and reaches, now in the Ben Johnson era, they're kind of copying that a little bit. I do think Loveland's going to fit that scheme perfectly. I think that's kind of why. I think it's just his route running fits the scheme. I don't even think they're viewing it as like, a lot of people are acting like Loveland's a great blocker. I don't know where that's come from. Like that's not. I don't think they're drafting him for that reason. Like it's his route running that's going to really fit the scheme well. Also, Luther Burden the third. That's a dream fit right there. So yeah. I mean, this is and a lot of other interesting selections across the board. But those two picks helping out again this whole offseason about helping out Caleb Williams on paper they have succeeded.
They have definitely succeeded on paper. We'll see how it looks on the field. But I definitely have a lot of trust in Ben Johnson that it's going to work out. Yeah, I mean, look, I will give you this. He is a better blocker than Warren. But I don't think that's a high bar.
Right.
So if you want a tight end who could block a little bit more, Loveland was definitely the pick. I still think Warren was the better prospect. That being said, like you said, it is a scheme-based thing, I think, with Loveland, and I trust Ben Johnson to kind of figure that out. Love the Luther Burden pick. I think that's an absolute home run. He was my number 3 receiver in this draft. They get him at pick 39. I think he's got some
take going to age well. With the Ben Johnson scheme, that take's going to age great.
I know. Yeah. So it's just it feels like a home run to me. They have a lot of explosiveness now. They have stuff they can look forward to for next season. And I mean, Johnson is trying to build a juggernaut on this offense. So if Caleb Williams can develop and get better, we obviously saw the flashes of it, even if it was very, very inconsistent. There is an opportunity for this to be a awesome team next season and maybe a sleeper.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to Kyle. I'm going to coin this the most boring draft. The Rams. I think they get a future first, so they have 2 first-round picks next year. And then I don't know. Terrence Ferguson will probably get playing time as a tight end. I guess Josiah Stewart should get some time as an edge. Chris Paul Jr. will probably end up being a starting linebacker at some point in his rookie deal at pick 172. That seems pretty good. But I mean, it's just you don't have a first round pick. They only ended up with 6 picks, which is very un-Rams of them. So there's not a ton to talk about here.
Yeah, just when we started to say that this team, has got this first round pick thing figured out, they go ahead and trade their first round pick. Unbelievable. But it was good value. I like the trade. Yeah. Josiah Stewart's an interesting player. He had very, very good numbers in college too, and they got him at pick 90. This team has done really well at drafting defensive linemen, it feels like lately, and they've hit some home runs, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is another home run. He's not the biggest guy, and that's kind of where I think he slips a little bit, but, we continue to say, I understand not drafting, I understand him dipping because of his traits and that being an issue, but we continue to say good football players at the edge spot are usually just good football players throughout. And there is a chance he is going to be very, very good next season. I could be a sneaky home run pick, not the most exciting player in Jarquez Hunter, but he gets the tough yards. There's a lot of interesting players, I think, in this draft too.
Yeah. Ultimately, I mean, the Rams have shown that, over the years, this guy is a little bit undersized, but he's a good player. Yeah, we'll take that guy.
Yeah, they're not afraid to ignore some traits at times if they think they're getting a good player, and I definitely trust this team to have that development and thing down. So I like what they're brewing there with that defense.
Yeah, let's not forget they drafted Tutu Atwell, a 5'9", 165-pound guy in the 2nd round.
Yeah, that helps.
That's shows their mindset. But we can move on. Let's go to the Seattle Seahawks, who drafted Gray Zabel, a player who some people really liked. Listen, there's a world where he ends up being a star player. We'll kind of have to wait and see on that. In my opinion, he dominated a low level of competition. In the small sample size, like the Senior Bowl and stuff, he looked good against higher level of competition, but there still is just a huge question mark there. Nick Emanuore, a guy a lot of people really liked. They get him early 2nd round. Elijah Arroyo, another guy people really liked. They get him pick 50, and then Jalen Milrow, a guy I liked. Kyle, you weren't as big of a fan of. They get him at pick 92. Which is an interesting maybe, at pick 92, this is in case Sam Darnold doesn't work out, at least we're not screwed at the quarterback position. And they had a ton of picks. I think they ended up with, they had double-digit picks. Damian Martinez, a really interesting sleeper at 223. They get him, he was projected to go 101, so that's very fascinating. So a really interesting draft here by Seattle.
Yeah, I think an interesting draft indeed. It felt like some reaches. I do. I obviously was not. I did my whole Jalen Milroe thing. I don't have to rehash it, but I
Hmm.
think taking him in the third round in the '90s is a lot more safer to me than people were saying he could go second round, and I would be a little more concerned with a pick like that. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. Zabel was probably the biggest riser of this draft from the Senior Bowl, and he obviously showcased some talent in that, but we'll see how it works out in extended sample size. Elijah Arroyo, he has some really nice plays. I know he's listed as a tight end. Don't think of him as a tight end because he's not going to do it. So I think there's some interesting players in this draft for sure. Even going down the list, like I like some of their late picks, honestly, too. Like Damon Martinez is a good running back. They got it pick 223. He was good for a number of years in college. I wouldn't be surprised if he's really good in the NFL. And even a guy, they got it with pick 238. Ricky White was a awesome college player. And they got him at 238. And, he's not the biggest guy. He's probably going to move into a slot receiver role, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up making the roster and playing well. So a lot of picks there, a lot of opportunities, and they got some guys late in the draft that I think a lot of college fans would love.
Gotcha. Yeah, and ultimately, when you have that many picks, some of them are going to work out, right? That's again, ask the Rams over the years. That tends to be, how do the Rams always seemingly find guys late in rounds that are good? Well, because they're drafting 10 times in late in rounds. Seattle trying that strategy here.
Yeah, I mean, if a couple of those guys hits, it works out.
Yeah. Well, let's go to another team that tried that strategy, another team that had a ton of draft picks, the 49ers here, who were constantly picking players. They got Mikael Williams at pick 11, Alfred Collins up and CJ West on the interior, Nick Martin, a player who was projected to go 170 if they got him at 75. Same thing with Upton Stout, a player who was projected to go 75 picks later, which, again, isn't the end all be all, but I've said it a million times, but I'll say it a million more. Usually when you draft a player who's projected to go 170 at pick 75, they play like a guy projected to go 170. But again, ultimately, a ton of just picks here. Some of them I really like CJ West, and some we'll see. But again, you have to feel like some of these are going to hit for a team that kind of really needs depth now, as they burned a lot of, they had a lot of cap casualties this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, if this is a bad draft, then I think we could stick and fork in San Francisco for a while. Because they definitely need to reinforce their team a little bit. Some interesting players here, but I do think the Mikael Williams one, I had him late first round grade on him. I do think that's a bit of a reach at 11. But I also think this is another one of those teams that just does things a little bit differently than everybody else and has a different evaluation process. So they clearly like something with him, with his intangibles, which are, very good. And he's a very good run defender. So maybe they just wanted to reinforce that a little bit, help their team out that way. But yeah, it's going to be very, they definitely need a few of these picks to work out because, this team needs the reinforcements.
Yeah. And I mean, he's only 20. And some people, I mean, he was projected to go 14th, right? I don't think either you or I were as high on him just because he is such a projection. But there are people that like him. And again, if they hit on that, okay, well now you could have, if he can reach his potential across from Nick Bosa, that could be pretty exciting for 49ers fans.
That's the hope, at least, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it definitely has the potential for it, but yeah, I mean, I think I still need to see a lot of these guys kind of work out for San Francisco. I don't think this was my favorite draft at all.
Yeah, I liked the pick. I like the amount of picks. I don't know if they maximized all those picks.
I would agree with that.
Like, just for example, Jordan Watkins projected to be undrafted. They get him at 138. That's not that. No one's going to talk about that. That might not be the best value, but maybe they like him. I don't know. Again, I haven't done a deep dive on Jordan Watkins, so I could be wrong. But just when there's a lot of those, usually doesn't work out unless you're the Lions.
Yeah, and it feels like definitely it's a lot of stretches, right? Sometimes the teams that march to the beat of their own drum kind of work out in their way because they have a really good evaluation process. But, I think San Francisco is going to have to prove to us, and these guys are going to have to prove to us. And, it's becoming quickly a small margin for error for this team because, like you said, they don't have the depth. So they need some of these guys to be good almost right away, which is the tougher thing.
Yeah. Kyle, let's move on to the last team to talk about in this podcast. One of my favorite drafts, one of everyone's favorite drafts, the Arizona Cardinals, who get Walter Nolan with pick 16. He was projected to go mid-first round, and that just feels like a smart move. They could use an interior guy, and he should be a very good interior guy for them. So now they can have him with Dalvin Tomlinson and Calais Campbell on the interior, which should help things. Also getting Will Johnson, a player projected to go 13th. He fell all the way to the middle of the second round due to injury concerns that maybe were worse than we had thought of. He claims he's fine, and those are overblown. So we'll see what happens. But ultimately, if they can hit on that and get just a good interior and a guy in a good corner, for this team, like that will go a long way. And for a team that we kind of said last year, early on, it looked like maybe they were taking 2 steps forward and ultimately only ended up taking 1 step forward last year. It feels like they have taken that second step forward in this draft.
That's at least the hope. I mean, this entire offseason has been about addressing this defense that struggled last season for sure. So they go and get Josh Sweat. They pay him big money in the offseason. They get Walter Nolan early in the draft. They get Will Johnson in the second round, which, is another guy. If this draft was this time last year with the same players, Will Johnson probably would have been a top 5 pick. Had some up and downs, had some injuries that moved him down a little bit in the draft. So it's going to be very interesting to see if he can bounce back and regain that form. But this team, I think they had 7 picks and took 6 defensive players. And, there is a chance that this all could hit, and this is an awesome thing. I think the one thing for Arizona is like, the expectation shouldn't be with all this young players that they just got that the defense is going to be fixed overnight. Like I wouldn't expect this defense to be like elite all of a sudden next season because of the way they've addressed it. I think they're doing things the right way. I just think it's still going to take a little bit of time, but I like the direction they're going in. I think they got a lot of defensive talent all of a sudden really quickly. I like these safeties. Garrett Williams is a good slot corner. They add Will Johnson, Sean Murphy-Bunting's in there. I think it could be a very interesting team at times next season. I think there's going to be some growing pains still, especially for positions like corner and defensive tackle that could take a while. But they got young talent.
Yeah, that's true. That's totally a fair point. I think the flip side too is if you're a Cardinals fan, you can easily talk yourself into the best case scenario of this team, which is pretty exciting.
I just said that, and I wouldn't be shocked if this team won this division next year.
Yeah, no,
things still have to go right. I think I'd still lean Los Angeles, but I'd have to look at the rosters fully. But I think everybody else in the West got worse, and I think they got better. Whether this is going to be fully formed Cardinals, what we have expectations for right away is a different story. But this team definitively got better this offseason, where it feels like everybody, multiple teams went in the wrong direction.
I mean, they were right there last year where we kind of said, all they have to do is go 1-1 against Seattle and split those 2 games, and they're probably going to win the division. They end up dropping both, and then the Rams beat the Bills, and that threw everything off, and the Rams took the division. But they were right there last year. It does feel like with a better defense, they can get over the hump. But again, that's not necessarily how this always works.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to say on paper what things are going to look like in May. It's a long time till September still. And yeah, there is an interesting case for Arizona Brewing for next season, though.
Yeah. Well, Kyle, that is our show. Let them know where you can find us on Twitter before we head out.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter. That is at Jackson Kruger. Make sure to follow me at by Kyle Gronin, and make sure to follow the account page at On the Sideline JK. That is at On the Sideline JK.
Of course, if you like audio-only podcast, anywhere you get your podcast, search On the Sideline Podcast. It should be available there. Just a quick reminder that we will not be doing the podcast next week. We will be here 2 weeks from today doing our top 32 quarterback rankings, ranking every team's starting quarterback. So that's always a fun show. But yeah, Kyle, that's our show.
All right, perfect. Yeah, fun stuff talking about the draft. Now we transition into more of our off-season preseason preview stuff. We do months of previews, so we got plenty of time to talk about all that. But it's going to be fun.
Yes, always a good time, Kyle. Next time I'll see you will be on Saturday.
I will. Yeah. You will be happily married by the time you probably recognize that I'm there.
Yeah. Well, hopefully happily married. I don't know. Things could go wrong.
Yeah. Knock on wood, I guess.
Yeah. I just don't want to count any chickens before they hatch, Kyle.
That's fair. That's fair.
Mhm.
That'd be very Minnesota Timberwolves of you.
Yes, exactly. Do you have any thoughts on just everything going on in the sports world? We saw some great game sevens in hockey.
Great game sevens in hockey. I haven't I haven't paid too much attention, but obviously saw the highlights of that stuff. It was amazing. That's some awesome stuff. Look at Toronto now, one up, 1-0 on the defending champs and playing tonight. Can Toronto finally put it all together? I think those are some interesting stories. And then basketball's just been terrific. I mean,
Yeah.
the Tyrese Halliburton stuff, the Denver
Mhm.
Nuggets pulling out some of these games that they've managed to pull out. It's been thrilling. It's been absolutely gut wrenching, and every night's been must watch.
Yeah, even like that Celtics game. I didn't watch it because I feel
Yeah,
like for
Jalen
basketball.
Brunson too. Yeah,
Yeah, for basketball, I tend to kind of just look at the score, and if it's close in the fourth quarter, I turn it on, and I'm like, oh, okay, that game's. I think it was like the third quarter, and I saw Celtics are up 20. I'm like, okay, kind of what we expected here, right? So I didn't even check, and then I just looked again and saw it like the Knicks won, and I was like, how'd that happen? Well, what happened? It's been crazy.
yeah. It feels like every night we're due for a big comeback, and
Mhm.
yeah, that Knicks game was wild. I expect the Celtics to lock in a little bit more and maybe not miss 45 threes, but we'll see. Crazy things happen every night
Yeah, and then the Warriors beating the Timberwolves without the Steph Curry.
for the majority of the game. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, that Timberwolves team looked so flat. I don't know what it is about that team, but I just remember them beating Denver last season in game 7, which was a terrific win, and you should celebrate that. You beat the defending champs game 7. You came back down 20 in that game to win it, but it felt like they really celebrated like they won the championship. And there was all about like Anthony Edwards after that game talking about I got Kyrie and all that kind of stuff. And then Kyrie scored 30 on him in the first half of game 1 in the conference finals. Dallas goes on to win that series. There's obviously the meme of them winning that play-in game where Patrick Beverley's crying on the court for winning the play-in game, and then
Mhm.
they go and get pounced in round 1 too. So I don't know if this is a team that kind of like gets a little bit ahead of themselves sometimes and needs to learn to like kind of, it's a young team for the most part. There is Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle, Mike Conley, stuff like that. But like, I wonder if this team just needs to learn to ride the emotions of the playoffs a little bit better and manage those expectations.
Yeah, we can't all be like James Harden of just like great throughout week, game in, game out.
Yeah, it never fails, James Harden.
Yeah, never once. What a run that guy's on.
Yeah, but maybe actually end up being the most reliable player in NBA history. We absolutely know that he is not going to come through in certain situations.
At one point, if it's like game 7, it's like, hey, good job, like James, like we got here, like now let's just you can sit on the bench for this one.
Yeah, that would be easier, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think maybe. I don't know, Kyle. Good show as always. I'll see you Saturday and see everyone else in a couple weeks. Any more thoughts? Or ready to get out of here?
No, we can get out of here. So good stuff.
Again, thanks to everybody for watching or listening. We do appreciate you. We'll be back in 2 weeks, and until then, have a good one.
Peace.